Chapter 110, Envy. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. When Zhang Yuochen arrived outside Divine Power Palace, he saw a line of 6 women and 2 men and thought to himself that the Western campus was really flourishing in yin while declining in yang. Many wore admiring and envious looks when they saw him approach. They didn't have any objections to the 3 female devils living in Dragon Martial Temple. After all, their cultivations spoke for themselves. Who would dare to be unhappy? Yet everyone was all new students. Why was Zhang Yuochen the only one who was allowed to live in Yellow Number 1 in Dragon Martial Temple, while the 3 female devils would chase away those of them who dared to enter? The one who couldn't accept this the most was Yachi Tankeng, because his circumstances were the most tragic. 2 years ago, he was the first-ranked new student. He entered Dragon Martial Temple feeling brave and energetic, but Huang Yanshan broke both his legs and threw him out that night. He even had to surrender his newly awarded 3,000 merits to her. In the beginning, he thought Zhang Yuochen's fate would be worse than his. But a month had now passed and he was still living there as if the 3 female devils never gave him any trouble. How was this possible? Yachi Tankeng couldn't understand. Juan Muxingling discovered there was yet another change in Zhang Yuochen's aura the minute she saw him. She took the initiative and asked, "Have you already refined that drop of half-saint's essence?" Zhang Yuochen nodded and smiled. "I have." She was incredibly surprised and looked at him with disbelief. "You refined it completely in just 1 day?" Even at her current realm, she would need 2 days to completely absorb 1 drop of half-saint's essence. How could Zhang Yuochen, who in the advanced stage of the Black Realm, no matter how talented, refine it faster than her? She didn't know that he possessed a time and space spinal. Only a little over a day had passed, but he had already practiced for 4 days inside the time and space spinal. Zhang Yuochen laughed lightly, saying, "Just a drop of half-saint's essence. If it's a drop of sacred liquid, it won't be refined so easily." She stared at him as if he was a monster. This person had brought her too many surprises and shocks. How many other secrets did he harbor? The 9 people lined up in the order of the time they entered the Western campus, putting Yachi Tankeng next to Juan Muxingling. He could clearly overhear her conversation with Zhang Yuochen. Yachi Tankeng laughed. "Brother Zhang, from what I know, you've only been here a month. It's too early for you to be awarded a drop of half-saint's essence. How did you come across it?" Zieling was also envious of Zhang Yuochen. After all, she had been chased out of Dragon Martial Temple by Huang Yanshan and Juan Muxingling, yet he could stay there to practice. How could she not be envious? A little smile appeared on her face as she said, "From what I know, there are only 2 ways for a student to get some half-saint's essence. First, you can naturally get a drop as is awarded each year to every student. Second, you can enter the black market, find someone you know, and purchase it at a high price. Do you know anyone from the black market?" Standing between Yachi Tanchong and Zhang Yuochen, Zieling looked about 16 and her lovely face continued to wear a smile. She was considered pretty but lacking compared to Juan Muxingling and Huang Yanshan. Her question hit on the heart of the matter. After all, everyone knew the Martial Market Bank and the black market were opponents. If Zhang Yuochen had really purchased his semi-holy water off the black market, it would make the school officials suspicious of him. Though they wouldn't throw him out of the school without any proof, the assumption was enough to end any of his dreams to practice in Dragon Martial Temple in the future. Zhang Yuochen didn't reply. On the other hand, Juan Muxingling appeared very unhappy as she stared at Yachi Tankeng and Zieling. The smile on her face disappeared instantly and she said coldly, "What do you two mean? Are you implying that Brother Zhang is a spy for the black market?" Zieling held a grudge against Juan Muxingling ever since she chased her out of Dragon Martial Temple a year ago, saying her talent was too low and had no right to practice there. Zieling smiled. "Sister Juan Mu, you misunderstand me. I never said Zhang Yuochen is a spy from the black market. I'm just curious about the source of his half-saint's essence. After all, it's such a precious item. If he can procure some from another source, I'd like to pay a high price and buy some from him." Clearly, she still suspected Zhang Yuochen. Yachi Tankeng said, "I'm also curious about your source. Can you sell me a few drops?" Zhang Yuochen looked at the 2 people beside him and smiled. "Since you're curious, I'll tell you. Mine was a meeting gift from Sister Juan Mu. If you want to buy some, You can ask her. They were both stunned and their gaze shifted to Juanmook Singerling, clearly not believing his words. The half-saint Sissensa was such a precious item that even Juanmook Singerling received only 8 drops a year. How could she possibly gift it to a new junior fellow apprentice of the Western campus? The other students were also in disbelief and they all looked at Juanmook Singerling. Juanmook Singerling smiled. That's true. His drop of half-saint's essence was from me. Yachi Tankung seemed to have finally understood something. No wonder Zhang Yuochen was able to stay in Dragon Martial Temple. He actually had Juanmook Singerling as his backer. If she could gift him a drop of the half-saint's essence, that meant their relationship couldn't be ordinary. Juanmook Singerling was incredibly talented and wickedly beautiful. How could she like Zhang Yuochen? Yachi Tankung became even more envious of him, wishing he could replace him. Huang Yanjun pulled Juanmook Singerling to the side, eyes cold and sharp. She said in a low voice, Singerling, don't tell me you've really fallen for that pervert. Juanmook Singerling laughed aloud. Not yet. Huang Yanjun was a little unhappy and said, you even gave him half-saint's essence and you still dare deny it? That pervert has a bad character and plays around. You'll cry your heart out if you give your heart to him. Juanmook Singerling's smile was as radiant as a blooming flower. She raised her slim and pale wrist, showing Huang Yanchen the space jade bracelet. This is the treasure he gave me. Huang Yanchen saw that Juanmook Singerling was beyond rescue. She tapped her between her friend's eyes. You're so happy with this cheap jade bracelet that you gifted him a drop of half-saint's essence in return? If he gives you something even more precious, aren't you going to be tricked into his bed? Wake up. Don't be tricked by that pervert. What cheap jade bracelet? Juanmook Singerling shot her a look and handed her the space jade bracelet. Immerse your genuine chi into the bracelet and tell me if you still think it's a cheap jade bracelet. Huang Yanqin's eyes carried disdain, not believing Zhang Yuochen would give her friend anything precious. It was probably just some low-class defense genuine martial arms. Despite what she thought, she still immersed her genuine chi into the jade bracelet. Swish. A gentle light glowed on the surface of the jade bracelet. Her expression gradually became solemn. She extended her pale hand towards the bracelet and her fingers went through the pale light, entered a large internal space. Space treasure. Huang Yanjun was absolutely shocked. If the bracelet wasn't in her hands, she would definitely think that she was dreaming. She didn't think she would be able to see a true space treasure with her own eyes in her lifetime. Did he really give you this space jade bracelet? Huang Yanjun asked enviously. Juanmook Singerling smiled with crinkled eyes. Sister Chen, first return the space bracelet to me. Huang Yanchen held the bracelet tightly and couldn't stop touching it. She liked it immensely and was reluctant to return it. She actually felt a sourness in her heart. Looking at her good sister in front of her, she actually felt a shred of envy. Don't tell anyone you have this bracelet. If others begin coveting it, it'll definitely bring you a lot of trouble. Being incredibly intelligent, Juanmook Singerling naturally knew what her friend was feeling. She smiled and said, from what I know, Zhang Yuochen has more than one space treasure. Huang Yanqin's eyes brightened. Really? Did you think he'd so casually give me a space bracelet otherwise? Huang Yanqin's shred of envy dissolved and she said coldly, I understand now. You showed me the space bracelet on purpose. Aren't you worried I'll snatch it from you? Why snatch mine? Go and snatch his. It shouldn't be a problem to get a space treasure considering your relationship with him. Juanmook Singerling batted her eyelashes at Huang Yanqin before returning to the front of Divine Power Palace to wait for the opening. Huang Yanqin's eyes carried disdain, not believing Zhang Yuochen would give her friend anything precious. It was probably just some low-class defense genuine martial arms. Zhang Yuochen felt that the way that Huang Yanqin stared at him was very odd, as if she wanted to eat him. He thought this was completely inexplicable. He didn't provoke her at all. Just then, another 3 students arrived at Divine Power Palace. They were Ziqian, Prince Huoxing, and Yao Qingdong. How can there be 3 more new students? Zieling stared at these 3 new students, feeling incredibly unhappy. Yachi Tankung furrowed his brow. I thought only the first-ranked new student each year can enter Divine Power Palace to practice. Why are they here? Zhang Yuochen seemed to have understood something and nodded gently. Though Yachi Tankung and Zieling were the first-ranked new students, They had only passed the third obstacle on the second level of the Wu Tower. Ziqian, Prince Huoxing, and Yao Qingtong all passed the first obstacle on the third floor of the Wu Tower when they entered the school. Though the three of them were not ranked first, they were more talented than half of the first-ranked students present. Naturally, they could break the rules and practice in Divine Power Palace,